First of all, if I start to run a little bit long, I'd like somebody to tell me that I'm long-winded. And I would like to thank everybody for showing up tonight. I love the Tram, cheap plug. Not just because my son works here, it's because it is an awesome place. And I purposely chose this place to tell this story. And this is the first time I've ever told this story in its entirety. It's a story about a guy I know named Jack. And Jack, for all intents and purposes, is a pretty cool guy. He's pretty selfish, and he's got that Peter Pan syndrome. Jack's pretty much a scrub most of his life. And Jack was that rock star kind of guy that y'all knew in high school that smoked all the weed and did all the drugs. And usually the question is, where can we get weed? Ended with, did you guys talk to Jack? So he had that whole drug smoking weed persona for many years, and by stoners he was looked up upon because he was the kind of guy who could have a room full of drugs and take them all and come out and create a painting or something like that. It was like Motley Crue, you could give them all the heroin in the world, they come out with the greatest hits album 3. Jack was just a fun guy. People like Jack because he had that persona, he was charismatic, and especially if he was stoned, he was awesome. A couple years ago, Jack walked into a head shop, and of course, we're all sort of young, right? He walked into a head shop because he heard about this new stuff that was legal, the synthetic stuff. And being Jack, I gotta try that out. But of course he did, and he fell in love. Now, the mindset is, this is synthetic marijuana, so it's just like real marijuana, right? I mean, it's not chemicals, right? A couple months later, Jack substituted all drugs for the synthetic stuff. And that's all pretty much he started doing exclusively. I mean, he's so charismatic, he talked himself into a credit line at the head shop. Okay? This is when you start, this is number one of the time you need to evaluate your life. When you have a credit line at the head shop and they know you by name, it's time to start evaluating stuff. But it was cheaper, and the high was just a little bit better from what I understood. See, it wasn't like regular pot where you'd smoke a couple, 3, 4 hits, and then you start to get stoned and wonder where the Twinkies are. This was more of an instant, one hit, I'm high, oh my God, this is awesome. And then bath salts came out. Now I know we don't have to go far for the headlines to talk about bath salts because there's some crazy activity going on. But Jack being Jack, and having an awesome rapport with the guys at the head shop, who did they get to test this stuff? Here, Jack, take this with you. Let us know if it's any good. Jack tried every kind of bath salt, every kind of synthetic. And after about a year, it got up to a really scary habit. It got to the point where Jack started to be a little different because he changed the chemical makeup of his body. Jack started with just a bag. Now he was up to 2 or 3 a day. Now he's up to a couple hits of bath salts a week. And now it's getting pretty serious because he's got health problems. Guy's never been in a hospital 15 years in his life. He spent 6 times within a year in the hospital. They pretty much wrote him off at one point because he kept coming back. And they don't help drug addicts make themselves better to go get themselves more drugs. I mean, Jack was that hardcore guy. Remember I told you? When he was having heart problems and heart attacks and they wanted to give him a stress test, Jack was smoking a synthetic in the bathroom at the hospital 5 minutes before they took him down to get the test. He also talked the nurse into giving him a cup of coffee. That's the kind of charisma this guy had. He could convince anybody that it's not a problem. I got this under control. Until April 20th. And I forgot to explain how irony works in Jack's life. Does anybody know what 420 means? Mm-hmm. You smoke pot. Okay. Because if you don't, my mother does not know what 420 is, okay? Because she's never seen marijuana in her life. But 420 is when Jack went into the hospital. And the doctor told him, you're pretty much written off. Everything had shut down. He couldn't eat food. Every time he tried to chew food, his body rejected it. They told him he was going to go into complete renal kidney failure. The doctor told him within 6 months, if you keep up this activity, you'll be dead. If the fact that you don't have food in your body doesn't kill you first. Jack was in the hospital for a couple days. Being Jack, he got himself out, and he went to his mother's house because he figured he didn't want to die in a hospital. And this was part of the equation that really just mind-boggled me, because Jack had just put it in that this drug was going to kill him. And that was okay. That eventually, I'll just keep smoking this drug and I'll be dead. And this was okay with Jack. And I just couldn't, you know, that's another time in your life when you need to reevaluate some stuff. When death is part of the equation and you're okay with it, you really need to evaluate it. But he didn't care, because the drug took a part of him. This was something he never experienced. With all the pills and all the pot and all the stuff that he had done, nothing took over him like this. He was a completely different person. For 2 months, Jack was homeless, because he took everything and made everyone away from him, because he knew that he was going to die. And he didn't want people to see him like that, so he just decided to go off in some corner and die. The day he checked himself out of the hospital, he didn't want to die in the hospital. He figured he'd go to his mother's house. His mother's a born-again Christian. And he figured, God's not going to take me here. You know what I mean? She's pretty tight. So Jack survived that night. And then the next day, he went out and spent a couple of days in the woods, far away from drugs. Because they told him the first 7 days of withdrawal at cold turkey would either make or break him. It would kill him, or he would make it. A little backup story of that is about a year into the chemicals, a friend of his came into his life. And it was the only one who didn't judge him, and at times even enabled him in his habit, because she just wanted to see him well, one way or the other. With all the support, she was there for all the hospital visits. She was there for all of the agony and the torture that Jack put himself through and put everybody else through. And 8 days later, after going into the hospital and pretty much writing himself off, Jack had his first breakfast. He actually ate food. And he knew that it was going to be okay. And I can stand here and tell you that 61 days later, Jack's still okay. He's clean, and he's never going to go back to chemicals again. And the reason I came to tell you this story is because I'm Jack. And I see more stuff going on in the newspapers lately, and in the news about this legal stuff that I got all hooked into and almost lost my damn life over. And these kids are doing this, and they're starting to die. And people are starting to bite people's faces and crazy, wacky stuff. Now, I gotta be honest with you, and all the time I did that stuff, I never wanted to bite anybody's faces. I never had a cannibalistic thought in my life, no matter what drug I did. So this kind of shocks me. But when is it gets too late that people start dying? I almost died. And I gotta tell you, it was scary. And I just kind of wrote off life thinking that I wasn't worthy of it. And that's not true. I was really worthy of it. And the reason I came here and picked this particular place was because I knew I wouldn't get judged. And I know y'all love a good story. And this is a good story. Because 61 days later, I promise anyone and everyone, I will never do chemicals again. And I promise you that I will also do whatever I have to make sure that nobody else does chemicals again. See, this is a new epidemic. They don't know what to do with it. And not a lot of people would take the route that I took to get myself clean, but it worked for me. And I gotta be honest with you, I didn't think I could do it. Day 2 sucked. Day 2 through 20 sucked. Today sucks, because I gotta think about it. I gotta think about it every day. And I took a kind of unique method that most people wouldn't take, and I brought a little visual aid. I want you people to grasp what an addict goes through in a habit. These are all empty packets of 1 month's use when I did drugs. There's 110 packets right there, all empty. I have this one, it's unsealed, never been opened. And if you ask me in a year from now, I'll show it to you. Because I will never open this, ever. This is my constant reminder that I'm alive. And people are cool with that. And I'm really cool with that. And anybody who thinks that they can't do it, that if they've got something that they can't overcome, let me tell you a story about my buddy Jack. And I gotta tell you, the biggest victory that I got on day 8 was a text that I locked forever into my phone that was from my son Justin, who I thought I'd lost his respect. And it says, "You look great today, better than you have in months. I'm really proud of you. Keep it up. I love you, dude." If that's not a great ending to a story and a victory, I don't know what is. And I want to thank you guys for listening to me tonight. I love you.